And once again, thank you, uh, the people of the Department of Management Studies, MVGR College of Engineering, Vizianagaram. And special thanks to E and ICT Academy, NIT Warangal, for initiating a very fruitful program. It's actually a 10 days faculty development program on artificial intelligence. So that generally brings on to the HR functions where we try to uh, bring about several concepts of AI, especially in the field of HR. So I can very well say, and I can very well confidently tell that this artificial intelligence plays a key role in HR functions in today's world when when you try to select your CVs or maybe resumes, or maybe if you're trying to interact a comfortable environment. So anywhere and everywhere in the world you have artificial intelligence, and this is the right topic at the right time, so that we march forward with the case of artificial intelligence. Maybe within 5 years or so, it might replace human beings. So once again, thank you for the opportunity. And amid this COVID pandemic has subsided, so which means that we are on the race towards a fruitful growth. So I hope my audio, video, as well as my screen is visible to you. I'm going to share my screen. So is my screen visible to you? I hope you can see the title slide. Okay, fine. So before starting the session, I would like to confirm whether my audio, video, and my screen is clear to you, right? Okay, right. Fine. So I'm not going to waste much of my time, in describing everything. I'm going to go straight into the topic, which is the topic of today's interest, which is AI-powered HR for modern day researchers. So I like to dedicate this especially for the faculty members, colleagues, students, and researchers, scientists of modern day. And this is Professor Dr. Christo Ananth for you. You can reach me at dr.christoananth@gmail.com. So before beginning the session, let me thank God for giving me this golden opportunity to deliver this useful session, to share my knowledge among my fellow national, international participants, students, and young researchers. So special thanks to the coordinators. I would like to thank Professor M. Ravindra Reddy, NIT Warangal, India. Of course, my well-wisher, Dr. M.V.V. Banu, the Department of Management Studies, MVGR College of Engineering, Vizianagaram, India. And special thanks to Professor Sanyasi Raju, who has been in regular contact with me, the head of the Department of Management Studies, MVGR College of Engineering, Vizianagaram, India. And all, the people who stood behind this fruitful event, the student coordinators, the helpers, technicians, department faculty members, colleagues, student researchers, and everybody who thought this event would become a grand success. So this is what we are going to discuss at a glance. So in today's session, we would discuss more about AI for HR and how actually this artificial intelligence can help the HR functions. We will discuss about onboarding, training, as well as skill development. And then we discuss about recruiting, screening, and then hiring, the training as well as skill development, day-to-day knowledge work with the help of AI. And then we discuss about the personalized e-learning. So that has been one such platform that we tend to improve with, okay? And it's going to adapt to the user thinking as well as the learning styles. Then we discuss about the collaboration spaces that is going to support the curation workflows and automated tagging, and what needs to be in place in order to make this AI to successfully work in a deployed environment. And then we discuss about the application of AI through employee life cycle. We discuss about how you save money by predicting who will quit. So these are some of the case studies I would like to explain with you. The turnover at a very famous company called Experian, and then the flight risk at IBM, keeping key talent at Nielsen, reducing the road traffic accidents, and then we discuss about a very important topic called as a reactive stress tolerance. And then we have achieving an optimum staffing level, and then we have 6 days at energy on EON, and then engagement at Shell, and we have the HR, which is actually driving the entire store performance, and finally we end up with opening a new office by Cisco. That's where AI plays a vital role. Of course, at regular intervals, I will be giving you some short videos about knowledge in our today's topics. Right. So this is AI for HR. Of course, everybody knows about AI, but how it is going to be implemented in HR? That's the question. So we can confidently say that this AI is still in the early stages or at the beginning stages in the field of HR. Definitely we can produce greater results, greater outputs whenever you compare with the human process, whether it may be training or maybe giving some the modules and the courses which are related to the critical resources of the people. So let us imagine in this case, if you are a HR executive interested about how artificial intelligence can actually support your company, you need not have to know about that software details about the programs. You need not have to know about the technologies. Okay, you need not have to think about the applications, but you have to think about how it is going to benefit your company. Okay, how your business is going to be productive. Okay, so in that aspect, you can ask some questions. So after AI, when you try to implant this AI in your business, now what is the business value of the initiative? What process is your organization trying to support? But what needs to be in place to make it work? So whenever you are into businesses, into companies, into industries, into multinational corporation, you have to think about the product. You have to think about the output. What business value it will have? What process will support? Or maybe what tools, what technologies can aid into successful implementation. Okay, so you should think about these when you are trying to deploy it in HR functions. And one thing is to drastically come to a conclusion is that you have to take AI to transform the entire employee life cycle. So generally, you can think about how sales thinks of the customer life cycle. Maybe when you have so many employees, like maybe 100 employees, 500 employees in your organization. So definitely, those who enjoy the services and those who work in your company are the customers of the HR functions. So here in industry or maybe a company or maybe a MNC, the customer life cycles tend to change within the same sector. So you can map the employee life cycle in order to answer the first two questions. Like we have, what is the business value of the initiative? What process is your organization trying to support? So in this case, you have to think about the customer life cycle, which we have to map it in order to get an answer. Okay, and then we have most of the HR functions which tend to meet the needs of the business. Like for example, we have sourcing. Okay, the prospective candidates will have to learn about your opening and your organization, which means you have to reach the right audience, and you have to get the right job description and openings in front of the right people. Okay, let us take in the case you are advertising in newspaper. Like several will try to call. Okay, is there an opening? I have completed my 12th standard. I have completed my BE. I have completed my MBA. Okay, so several questions pop up. Suppose if you market them in your common website. Okay, like maybe let us take in the case a website where you can find your conference like Nova Fest. Okay, maybe the crowd, the audience will be refined. Okay, maybe if you are trying to showcase in ResearchGate, let us take in the case ResearchGate is a powerful platform. So if you have done in that way, then maybe you might reach out to the right people. Maybe if you have showcase in LinkedIn, maybe you might find the right crowd you want. Okay, because just clicking through the profile, you will get the glimpse of everything. Okay, so that's how you reach the right job to the right people. And AI makes this process very efficient by presenting job openings to the target candidates. Okay, so which means that we have more appropriate candidate applications. Okay, so that's the way AI acts. Okay, and it is going to find the apt correct profile matching to that particular job description. So we have some tools which will adjust with the phrasing as well as the language in advertisements in order to optimize the engagement. So our process should be a continuing process. Some universities, what they try to do when you try to apply, okay, so maybe if it is not shortlisted, which means they will say you cannot apply for a period of 3 months. Okay, so which means we will have some reputation about the company or organization, and we will be trying to follow that company. So it should bring about a good rapport with the customers or the audience as well. And this is where AI plays a vital role. And then we have screening. We have candidate screening. That's if you take in the case of human labor, if human people are involved, then it is labor intensive and very tedious process. But if you try to include some tools of AI, like basic text analytics tools, they will be using some pattern matching approaches to identify the needed skills and education, and to screen out the applicants who do not meet the basic requirements. I would rather compare this with the survey jobs. Okay, like for example, there are several work from home survey jobs. Like if you try to fill out all the the surveys, okay, maybe like 15-20 questions are there. Okay, you might fill out your genuine details, but you will not enter your personal details. But as when you enter them, okay, sometimes what happens at the end of the survey, it shows your data doesn't match with our requirements. Okay, so it's a pattern matching approach where AI play a vital role, and that's the same way that the screening process also takes place. So a more apt approach is to use the past successful hires to identify candidates by matching the resumes against the the appropriate patterns. And definitely it's going to segregate the resumes with a case of the historical information about the needs, about the requirements, about the people who have the relevant badges, relevant qualifications. They will get selected according to the AI pattern matching techniques. And then we have matching. So you are going to have thousands of people who are going to apply for that particular job, but you have to determine which candidate is the correct one. Okay, which means that you have to assess a person across different dimensions. Only then you can come to a conclusion whether that candidate is suitable for your job or not. May it be a behavior style, or maybe communication approaches, or maybe risk oriented, or maybe risk intuitive person, or maybe fast learning capability, okay, ability to adapt to things, technical skills, okay, cognitive skills. So the person should be a multi-dimensional. He or she should be a 360-degree personality in order to fit to that particular job. So you have to make the candidate interact with the supervisors, or maybe managers, or maybe co-workers, and you can determine the soft skills as well as the hard skills. So whether it matches to the role, or maybe responsibility or position, and the the entire team as well. Okay, so this is where AI compares the candidate's assessment with the results of past or current successful people in the same job. I would rather compare this with the applying to the Western countries. Okay, like maybe UK or maybe Europe. Okay, or maybe Singapore, Canada, US, or so on. So what we people do, we tend to send the same CV to multiple people if you are applying for a job. So that's where the problem is. You have to present a job specific, role specific, and department specific profile, and then you have to send it. But make sure you read all the roles, responsibilities, and requirements of that particular company, of that particular organization, of that particular institution. Then you come to a conclusion whether you have to apply it or not. Okay, maybe they might be requiring some language tests. They might be asking for some certifications, some accreditations that we might not have passed, but simply we tend to send it to that team. Okay, so immediately what happens? The AI techniques will match it correctly and it will say your CV is not selected. Okay, so you have to be a role specific, responsibility oriented person in order to apply for a job. So for example, generally one would not put a introvert in an outboard sales position or place a creative problem solver who's going to use the formalities and rules in a position that requires rigor adherence to the process. So which means we have several dozens of vendors definitely who can help you with this type of matching. Okay, some have a industry specialization. Some will be specialist in a particular role, maybe to assess the abilities. Some would be more technical. They would be assess only the technical skills. They would be assessing only the programming skills. While others will be tend to be more general, like they will be just observing your way of sitting, way of posture, how you sit, how you communicate, how you naturally look into, how you present to. So the assessment of vendors is different according to the type of match. And in the case of the management, just a sales organization is going to manage different sales prospects and opportunities. Definitely, the organization where you're working with or maybe the organization where you're trying to look for a job will have its own talent pipeline. So you have to retain the results of the interviews as well as the assessments. And a great candidate might be interested in an organization, or maybe an organization might be interested in a right candidate, but the timing may not be right. So what the people, normally the audience do, they will compare the opportunities about how they are being treated during several parts of the process, maybe during several industries where they are searching for job. And a negative experience affects the position, also the communicate, the organization they work with. Okay, but it's all about how they communicate their experience to the peers. For example, if I had a bitter experience in one particular company and somehow I got selected, which means I will be sharing this experience to my friends, my mutual friends, even the people who are working in the company even. Okay, so that is going to affect that company. That is going to maybe take over to the colleagues, to the peers, as well as the broader market also. So that is going to affect the reputation of the company or maybe the industry also. So you should make sure that the audience where you are looking for the right candidate, they should not have any bitter experience. So which means you should have a pleasant experience both in the company as well as in the people. So in order to improve this candidate experience, generally the HR staff, definitely he or she should acknowledge the receipt of the application and should be promptly communicating the status updates. Like until the screening or maybe the selection process is over, the HR should be able to reply to the candidate's questions anytime, 24/7, which means the candidates might ask some routine questions like when is the second round, when is the third round, Okay, or maybe is my CV got selected, or maybe do I need any special skills? Do I have to send any further documents, supporting documents? Okay, and also the scheduling as well as managing the interview and assessment logics. So the the person who's trying to interview, or maybe the HR, should make sure the candidate does not have a negative experience. But however, larger number of job seekers, or maybe many of the interactions generated by the hard to fill positions, often make this too costly to do it manually, and that's the reason you tend to use this AI. So this you would have come across in several websites, like we have chatbots. Like whenever you open a reputed company website, you have chatbots which provide routine answers to questions. Like for example, hi, user so and so. Okay, can you please input your name? Okay, so if I try to mention it as Christo, hi Christo, how are you? How may I help you? Okay, so maybe if I'm telling like, okay, I have completed so and I'm looking for a particular job in your company. Okay, then okay, what is the role that you're looking for? Maybe if I'm looking for a HR executive, okay, or maybe a team leader, or maybe a team member. Okay, so definitely accordingly you will get the reply. Okay, maybe you can send your CV to so and so email ID, or maybe you can apply at that following link. Okay, so it generally includes several features that allow escalation to a human. So you need not have to have a human being to answer all these questions. So that's the reason you use AI technology to implant this chatbots. Okay, and AI definitely, if you try to bring about in the training as well as skill development, definitely it can bring customized job satisfaction and retention of employees as well. Even after the recruitment tasks are complete and the candidate has been handed to the hiring manager, which means the AI tools are going to predict the job skills, and the ultimate success can identify the knowledge and the skill gaps. So may it be e-learning or maybe helper boards, definitely AI is going to fill those gaps. So maybe if you take in the case of a e-learning program, okay, so it's going to help with the on-the-job training. Okay, so maybe in the call centers, if you try to work, we have AI simulators who is going to train the new call center representative. So we have to go for a training, not by the human beings. Okay, they need not have to physically sit there, but you tend to use the AI simulations for training the new people, the new call center representatives. And similarly, we have helper bots also, just like chat bots. We are going to get the real-time answers for the new workers. Okay, maybe they might be having some problem with understanding a particular tool. So it will be giving you the suggestions or maybe some ideas. Okay, so just like in a WhatsApp, in a business account, when you tend to send a hi message to somebody, if it is associated with a business account, okay, it shows, okay, hello sir, I'm busy right now, I will be replying you after a short while, within 24 hours, let us take in the guess. So similarly, you can provide answers, okay, the relevant answers according to the knowledge tools that is being fed in the database. So if you tend to use this AI tools here, definitely we can bring about sustained job satisfaction and as well as the retention of the employees. Also in the resume processes, we have applicant screening as well as skill assessment, capabilities assessment. We can identify the knowledge gaps. We can reskill the opportunities. We can go for experience reapplication, IPR, as well as the alignment of the skills as well. May it be the statistical models or maybe emotional checkup or maybe the psychological makeup. Definitely, we are going to assess the the employees emotional idea with regards to recruiting or maybe screening as well as the hiring, training and skill development. So this is where we tend to use factors like vacations or maybe needed skills or maybe seasonal variations or maybe climate change as well. So we can go for several promotions, we can go for several vacations from time to time in order to keep the employer satisfied, okay, according to the needs and requirements. Okay, so you need not have to get the complete work from all the employees 24/7, but you have to assess the capabilities, like how the employer how the employee is performing according to the different real-time situations, how the employee is subjected to the seasonal variations, how the employee has the needed skills to complete different varieties of projects. So that you should analyze from time to time, and that's the reason you tend to use AI along with ML, machine learning, okay, to actually predict the customer behavior. So e-learning is going to make a vital role. Even in the pandemic, you can see this e-learning tend to be used by several educational institutions and organizations. Definitely, the personalized e-learning should adapt to the user thinking as well as the learning styles. Okay, so whatever the faculty or maybe the personal is trying to explain us, so which means we should be able to adapt to it, we should be able to learn it, and we should be able to think it, we should be able to rethink it, and we should be able to apply in the smaller projects, and then we have to develop into bigger projects. So that's the way the knowledge transfer as well as the training comes in place with the customized as well as the real-time learning environment. So just-in-time training definitely will help you to provide the context-appropriate information. Like for example, maybe if there is one different project that your team has come up, which means that you cannot have the same training capabilities in all of the projects, which means the team leader might have a different experience with that particular project. So which means he or she will come up with just-in-time training, which means we will adapt it, we will try to identify that context-appropriate information, and that's where augmented reality overlay applications, which definitely help you to provide several physical tasks in a virtual mode. For example, you might be caught up in floods, you might be caught up in a COVID as well. So which means you have to adapt to the technologies via Zoom or maybe Google Meet or maybe any Webex platform. And definitely performance reviews matter the most, because we are going to validate the data with respect to the career success as well as personal development. So the work that you are trying to do not only is going to help the project, but definitely it is going to shape your career. It is going to test your maturity level. It is going to check for your relevant approach towards the success. So definitely it is going to make a major impact in your career. And even with the case of AI, we have something called semantic search. Okay, like just like in Google. Okay, we have a semantic search. It's less searching, and you are going to go for more finding. Okay, so it's going to improve the information access. We have better apt question answering systems that's going to identify the employee intents with the help of machine learning, and we have helper boards, configuration boards, as well as transaction boards to enable the retrieval of the unstructured information. It's going to guide the users to the complex product and equipment setup, and it's going to perform routine queries of the structured data sources. So you have to go for the finding of the information rather than searching of the information. We do not have to search for all the information, but all we need is to have a right information with less amount of time. So that's the way you go with the support of AI in helper configuration as well as transaction rules. And in order to make this AI work, so you should first of all identify that AI is not magic, but the thing is that you have to understand it. And chances that it might replace the human beings if we are lazy. Okay, so keep this in mind. If we are lazy, it is going to replace us. just like you see in movies. Okay, several cinemas. Okay, so which means it has to be understandable, it has to be user friendly, and success requires clarity of business process. So if humans can't figure it out, AI will not be able to add any value to it. So what you do, you map your employee life cycle. So that's where step 0 comes in. Okay, so you have to map the employee life cycle, you have to find the talent, and you have to identify how you screen the applicants, how you assess the applicants, get the details about history, the past as well as the current life cycle, get as much details as possible, and where are the bottlenecks, where do things go off the track, what's the candidate's experience, whether it is positive or maybe negative experience, how can the general process be improved. Don't think about the technology in the process, but instead think about the output, the net result. Okay, so it's not about how you apply the technology, but it is how you make the results to be productive. Okay, so similarly you try to compare the results with the internal as well as external stakeholders. So you should analyze all these things in order to make AI work. You have a new hire, okay, and then you go for onboard, and then you tend to evaluate, and then you try to develop, and then you try to encourage, you try to recognize the awards, okay, and then farewell. Okay, so because we don't fit into one particular project all the time, which means we are constantly evolving across different projects. So after farewell, again attracting to one particular scenario or maybe situation or maybe a project, again a new hire. So the process is going to revolve on, and that's the way you solve it using AI. So for each of these scenarios, for each of these situations, AI plays a vital role. So you should make it understandable. So don't start with the tools and look for the problems to solve, but instead you think about the business challenges and be specific when you try to describe them. So for each and every case, please understand this, you have to map the employee life cycle, and you cannot automate it what you don't understand, and you can't automate an entire miss. Okay, so you have to understand it, and only then you can go for automation. So if you look at vendors, if you start looking for vendors, maybe you can show your demo scenarios and the user cases. Maybe don't look for their cases, instead you show your cases and make them to work, which means they will understand your scenarios and they will tend to apply these scenarios, and they will be looking for the right people. So this entire process with new hire, onboard, evaluate, develop, encourage, recognize, farewell, attract, this is a life cycle, which is you have to map the employee life cycle with the AI. So another critical element is defining success, which means what part of the process will be improved, what are the baseline measures you have to consider, and let us take in the case if you have considered what is to be measured today and what are the stakeholders, you have to go for several improvements. You cannot stay on the, or maybe you cannot sail on the same boat for a long time. Okay, and if people don't trust your baselines, they will not be convinced. So which means you have to make sure they understand the roles and responsibilities about the entire process, and only then you formulate this AI. So good quality data is critical. Identify the sources of data and be sure to test the vendor solutions using your data and user cases. So don't rely too much on the vendors, but instead you test your vendors also. So make sure they perform according to your requirements. And one big red flag for HR is the risk for potential bias in programs. So you ask the vendors to certify in writing how they develop their models and how they tend to validate their data. So you can come to a conclusion whether you are going in the right track towards success. And be aware of the potential biases generally would cause the AI to misinterpret the candidate's qualifications. So if the data sources on which the vendor built their tool does not match their demographic data, which means you should be very careful about it. And with the help of AI, we can bring about in several HR functions, from capturing the experiential knowledge of long-time employees to make it available throughout the organization. So as I told you earlier, with the case of training as well as knowledge sharing, definitely AI plays a vital role, and it's a very great advantage to your business, because you will help to identify the potential benefits, and you will be identifying the gaps where you are not focusing on to, and maybe you can generally go for several rewards, several awards of the long-time employees to make sure they stay comfortable in your project. So this is where you tend to apply this AI through the employee lifecycle. I told you earlier, like step 0 is mapping the employee lifecycle. So you apply AI to the employee lifecycle, like attract, hire, engage, retain, develop, grow, serve. Okay, so this is an entire life cycle, and I can say very well that it is a complete life cycle. So it's going to go on and on with the projects. Okay, so without attraction, nothing comes up. Okay, even with the case of the employee referrals. Okay, or maybe the identifying the right place to look for the right candidate. Maybe hiring, engaging, retaining. Okay, so if you don't retain, and if you cut short all the resources, which means employees are not going to stay in your company, and your company will not meet their desired target. Okay, you are not going to get the required skills. Okay, and then you have to develop, go on and on with the existing technologies. You have to grow constantly, and you have to serve. You have to reach out to the public. So continuing the session, these are the case studies that I examined back in 2015 March, when the Wall Street Journal, very famous Wall Street Journal, they published a research article on the algorithm that tells a boss who might quit. So generally the article explored how Credit Suisse was able to predict who might quit the company, and it was one of the finest examples of the now very popular employee. You have the Churn Analytics. So it was considered about a very detailed, very peculiar analytics about telling the boss who might quit. So not only were the analysts of Credit Suisse was able to predict who might quit, but they could also identify why these people actually quit. So this information was provided anonymously to managers, so they would risk, they would reduce this turnover risk factors, and definitely they can go for wider retention of the employees. So in addition to it, there were special managers who were trained to retain the high performing employees, ones who tend to stay long in the company, who had a very high flight risk. So maybe some might be staying long in the company, some would be earning a lot. So maybe we could go for retaining these employees. Maybe that might impact the turnover of the company. And in total, this program saved the Credit Suisse approximately like $70 million a year. So that was huge. That was huge with the case of the the Credit Suisse. And then we have Experian. That's a turnover Experian. So employee attrition or maybe employee reduction at Experian was a problem in those days, and the company was facing levels of turnover that were 3 to 4% higher than they wanted it to be. So by building a predictive model that can include 200 attributes, 200 various attributes, like we have like team size, team structure, supervisor performance, and then the length of the commute. Okay, they were able to predict the flight risk. So an example risk factor was teams of more than 10 to 12 people. So the analytics team was able to identify the flight risk triggers, and when someone moved further away from the office, definitely it would increase the immediate flight risk. So with that, they were able to use and predict this turnover at this experience. Also, the model was rolled out in multiple regions in the earlier years with slight differences to the predictive algorithm. And these insights combined with good management practices reportedly resulted in drop in attribution or maybe reduction of 2 to 3% over the past 18 months, definitely with an estimated saving of $8 million to $10 million. And there was flight risk at IBM. So similarly, with the case of reduction of employees in order to categorize or analyze its analytics, a similar analysis was done in IBM where the turnover was high for certain business critical roles. So using this IBM's Watson's machine learning capabilities, the workforce analytics team, they generally built an algorithm that includes several sources like recruitment data, tenure, track their employees, promotion history, how the employees were performing, how the promotion took place, what about their performance, what are their roles, their salary, their hikes, the location where they work with, the roles they take, and much more. And the company also included employee sentiment measured through their social pulse. So the hypothesis is all about engagement with the social media might fall when employees were thinking about leaving. So the investment generally yielded $300 million over the 4 years, and turnover for the critical roles, definitely it was high, but it was dropped by 25%. So when you tend to evaluate these scenarios, so definitely the productivity has gradually improved while the recruitment costs have fallen. So this is the real taste of success. Okay, so we are able to better analyze the factors and we are reducing the flight risk at IBM. And then keeping key talent at Nielsen. So Nielsen created a similar predictive model back in 2015. So the first predictive model only included 20 variables, like we had age, gender, tenure, the life period they work with, and the manager rating as well. So over time, more variables were added according to the present technologies, and this exercise provided multiple insights, including that the first year, which mattered the most, and the first year employees were checked whether they had the critical contact points. For example, the first check-in with your manager had to happen within a certain time span after hiring, otherwise it would trigger a notification. So this was a proven important condition for the first year retention. So definitely they were able to predict this key talent, and they were able to analyze several more variables when the first year retention of the employees played a vital role. So although getting promoted pushed people to stay, so the lateral moves were also a strong motivator for people to stay. And the significant outcome was that the highest flight risk in the next 6 months were approached, and the company were able to move 40% to a new role. So the flight risk was a major problem, and that's the reason they moved to 40% of the people to a less risk zone. So making these lateral moves increase an associate's chance of staying with the company by 48%. And you can even reduce the road traffic accidents with AI. So this is a good study about the impact of the good hiring assessments which took place in Africa, Zimbabwe. A local transport business wanted to reduce the cost of the road traffic accidents of their drivers. So this not only posed a danger to the people who are involved in these accidents, but also it delayed the transport and were very costly because of the material damages. So what the local consultancy did, it researched if psychometric tests could predict if the people had a larger likelihood to be involved in a traffic accident than the other. And if they were able to identify these factors, which means they could use this as a selection criteria for new hires. So they were able to better analyze this with some useful insights. It turned out to be a DDC, defensive driving certificate, that drivers had to get, had no impact on the likelihood to be involved in that accident. So that is going to reduce greater road traffic accidents with AI. So we were able to come up with some conclusion about the area of assessment and the relationship with the RTA risk, the beta values and the p values. So we had like concentration to be significant, and the beta values, it dropped down -1, 0.02 was the p value. With the case of motor speed, it is considered insignificant. Reaction speed, it is insignificant. Stress tolerance, reactive stress tolerance, it is significant. Tracking deviation, it is insignificant. Visual field, it is insignificant. And as you can see, the beta values increased. Okay, like a -1, -0.02, -0.02. And reaction speed, it's considered to be positive. But for other cases, it is -2.2047. And tracking deviation, we have -0.0010. Visual field, it is -0012. So even we were able to analyze the p values for concentration, for motor speed as well. We are able to identify for the tracking deviation as well as for the visual field as well. So we were able to better reduce the traffic accidents with the analytics about the DDC. And then we have reactive stress tolerance. We were able to relate it to the accident proneness about the number of years a driver had their driver's license, and assessing a driver's baseline concentration and reactive stress tolerance before hiring them. Definitely it made sense. So definitely it is going to benefit the older drivers as they were not experienced. So which means the reactive stress tolerance will play a vital role, and definitely it will reduce the accident proneness. And you can achieve an optimum staffing level as well. So that's a very interesting HR analytics case study about reaching optimum staffing levels. So even in Zimbabwe, we had a large mining company which was concerned about losing money of the over or understaffed departments. So the experts, they took an interesting approach about overstaffing as well as understaffing. They took the number of employees of a business unit and compared it to the business activity of the same business unit measured over 17 quarters. So the relationship between the number of employees as well as the business activity was strong, with a R squared of 70.3%, which means that this 70.3% could be explained by the number of employees. So we are able to plot these two dimensions about understaffing as well as overstaffing. The team was able to identify the departments that were actually overstaffed and the departments which were understaffed. So we were able to get that strong figure of 70.34. I would rather explain this with the help of a graph even. So this is the number of technicians versus the business activity. This is the number of employees, like 0, 1, 2, 3 up to 9. Okay, and this is the relative business activity. Okay, like 0%, 20%, 40%, 60, 80, 100 and 120. And the number of technicians is calculated like 4.45 multiplied by relative business activity plus 1.26, that's a threshold value. So we were able to have the squared R value, which is 70.34%. So here excessive employees were being retrenched, which means that the break-even point of the retrenchment cost was only 2 months in a month of 3, and definitely you can see that the company was actually saving a lot of money. So we had like A/B testing employee training. So the company was a large Dutch FMCG retailer that used people analytics to analyze the effects of training, and the analysts found that the training shop personnel had a positive impact on the shop's financial performance. And via A/B testing employee training, definitely we were able to analyze with the case of region of interest of the training program was actually 400%. It was greater than the normal. And then sick days at Energy On, a very famous German company. So People Analytics also helped Energy On, which tackle the employee absence and absenteeism in this German 43,000 plus people energy company had risen above the benchmark, which means the analytics team formulated 55 hypotheses. They tested 21 of them and they tend to validate 11. And one of the examples was that selling back untaken holiday did not increase the absenteeism. So what did increase the absenteeism was a lack of longer holiday, which means that we are not having enough holidays, like only during Sunday we have the holidays. So that's the reason maybe the sick days had increase and not taking a day or two once in a while during the year. Okay, so this insight was communicated to the managers to improve the holiday approval policies, like second Saturday, fourth Saturday, we have all holidays. So that should be in practice, like lesser number of workers, some holidays. So definitely it worked on with the famous Energy On German company. In the developments of AI, and definitely I can very well say that AI over the coming years it will come up with several new technologies, and we are going to analyze another scenario, a user case scenario with the case of Clarks. That's a very famous shoe retailer. So a shoe retailer, Clarks, definitely looked onto the relationship between engagement as well as financial performance. But the first question they asked was there any connection? Was there any relation between the engagement and the financial performance? Because that the company already reported higher than average levels of engagement, definitely it looked into the returns of engagement and whether the returns of the engagement can diminish with the higher levels. So this is where Clark's team was very particular at. They worked with the statisticians who ran the retailer's distribution planning system, and in total there were 450 business performance data points were included in the analysis. So generally the results showed that there was a connection, there was indeed a connection between the engagement and the financial performance. So the engagement leads to higher business performance, and in Clark's case, every 1 percentage point improvement in engagement definitely would lead to 0.4% improvement in the business performance. So they were able to analyze that with the help of AI. And to learn from this and to make it more actionable, the team also analyzed the characteristics of 100 best performing stores, both qualitative approach as well as quantitative approach, and they were able to find out there was an optimum team size in the store, and the length of the tenure of a store manager was a significant predictor of the performance. So they were able to get some formidable results, and the team from these analytics was able to create a blueprint for the higher performing stores, and in addition they created an engagement toolkit that the managers can use it to improve the performance. And according to the company's chief people officer, the results speak for themselves, and they were able to get better formidable results with the higher team size as well. And there was engagement at Shell as well. Similarly, with the case of Shell, very famous company, where the engagement was linked to the superior business performance through the improved safety practices, and they were able to find out that 1% increase in the employee engagement generally will have 4% drop of the recordable case frequency. Okay, so that's what they mentioned. They observed at Shell, and safety performance was directly related to the business performance. So if you are able to provide promising safety practices, definitely the engagement would be increased, and definitely there would be a drop in the recordable case frequency. And HR driving a store performance is a formidable factor, and another great people analytics case was in a large restaurant chain. So the management team did not understand why. There was a downward spiral. They had piece of information, but about how you tend to implement the effective policies, they were really confused at. So what they did, they hired some consultants, and then there was a team of consultants was asked to investigate and provide some data insight. So there was lack of some good data. So the team, what they did, they decided to measure it themselves using a survey. What was interesting in this case study was that they didn't use a normal engagement survey. They generally looked at the relevant business outcome. So according to that, they conducted a survey. So they were able to determine the customer count, customer satisfaction, and employee retention. So that was the key role. Okay, so key outcomes they identified. So business performance would increase if customer count, customer satisfaction, and employee retention was mentioned. So the company then deployed a business focus engagement survey. So that's going to focus on the linked employee outcomes in comparison to the real business outcomes, and priorities on the factors which had the largest impact on the business outcomes, and to show the business impact of the improvements of these factors. And we were able to analyze that the frontline managers need more focus that show the largest impact. So this store performance factors generally would be having three outcomes. We have customer count, customer satisfaction, and employee retention. So with that, generally we were able to analyze the business focus engagement survey. So this was the thing I'm talking about. Like we have performance average rating, okay, versus the level of impact on the turnover intentions. Okay, so we had 3.2, 3.4 up to 4.4. Okay, so the entire thing we are categorizing into 4 factors. We have maintain, okay, monitor, promote, focus. Okay, so with the case of maintain, we had some customer focus and safety criteria as well. With the case of monitor, we were able to analyze the career development, changing behavior, valued customers, accountability, and compensation. And with the case of promote, we would go in for ethical way, the job fit, the team work, and the senior leaders also. Focus was made major on the communication and management. So entire thing, it's all about how you promote and take it to the next higher level standard. So 6 factors that would generally receive the most attention are in the blue square. So we had this one: ethics, job fit, teamwork, senior leaders, management, and communication. So that was the key factors. So if you try to focus on these factors, line managers would create the largest return, and restaurant managers who had an average score of maybe 4 or maybe higher, definitely they will be having like 16% increase in the customer satisfaction, and definitely we will have more than 18,000 customers within a year, and definitely 10% lesser staff turnover. So this was a good engagement survey, business engagement survey, which is driving the store performance. And that was another final case study we analyzed with opening a new office by Cisco. So Cisco, they used a demographic data to identify where they can best open up new offices. So location matters, services matters, and outcome matters. So by combining various data, including current usage rates of office space, cost and availability of key talent, and availability of graduates from universities, generally they allow them to expand in areas where there were fewer large players competing for the same talent. So in addition to selecting a new office, Cisco, what they did, they made use of the same data to find locations where the employees with relevant qualifications were available, and they were available in plenty. So whenever it comes to AI implementation in your HR functions, may you be a business perspective, or maybe if you are a teaching faculty, if you are a research faculty, you have to come up with several ideas. You have to come up with several innovations, and that's the reason you go for several internships. You go for several surveys as well. So this has been one of my code line So don't expect others to do all the work. Say to yourself, I have to initiate. I am entirely responsible. I am the sole one, and I have to give my own promotion. Because whenever you are trying to come up with an innovative idea, don't go for a team way. Instead, you go it in an individual way, and then if you are able to identify some potential collaborators, then you go for a teamwork. And whenever you are going for any funded projects, and if you are going for real innovations in AI, even real world even, hurdles might come up at any point of your time. Situations might choke you, and never ever give up at any point in your life. Just like imagining a frog, if you're caught in the mouth of the crane, choke it up, whatever the situation may be. And thank you for your kind patience. Let's all start working when it comes to building this AI into the next higher level. It has already replaced human beings in some areas, but the future is in your hands. If you are trying to be very lazy, then of course it might replace all of our functions, and definitely Alexa will be Mr. Alexa and Mrs. Alexa, and definitely it is going to replace our human beings. So once again, thank you for the opportunity given by the management, the Department of Management Studies, MVGR College of Engineering, and of course the healthy collaboration with NIT Warangal, the coordinators, the people, the audience who stood patiently. I am sorry that there were some audio issues, but I think this has been one of my key idea. The people of today's generation are much more focused on the audio rather than the video. Okay, I think we should focus on the visuals rather than hearing everything, because our eyes and our actions should speak a lot more than our words. So that was the key thing out of the audio issues in the video. Okay, so thank you for once again for the opportunity given. Over to you. If you have any doubts, or maybe if you have any clarifications, please ask them right now.